Almost no one ever truly grasps this, and the overwhelming majority of men will go through life without ever noticing the real reason certain women never forget them. If a woman has never truly forgotten you, it wasn't luck. And if she moved on too quickly, it's because you never mastered these 5 behaviors that only unforgettable men truly live by. Prepare yourself, because number 5 is the single most powerful truth you'll ever hear as a man. The man who remains calm when everyone else is losing control. There is one thing women never forget, no matter how much time passes. A man who stays calm when the entire world around him is burning. A man who, instead of reacting on impulse, chooses mastery. A man who refuses to be pulled into emotional chaos, provocations, or pressure. Why does this one quality burn itself so deeply into a woman's memory? Because it's rare, because it's revealing, because it's unconsciously irresistible. A woman can forget your looks, your style, your jokes, but she will never forget the feeling she had when you stayed completely calm in a situation where almost every other man would have exploded. Masculine calm is an emotional sanctuary. Picture this scene you've almost certainly lived through. She's stressed, overwhelmed, upset, maybe even lashing out a little. She speaks quickly, she escalates. She might even test you without realizing it. The average man falls straight into the trap. He raises his voice, he gets defensive, he takes it personally. He needs to win the argument, he needs to prove he's right. You breathe, you observe, you stay rooted. You don't try to win the fight. You don't try to dominate her. You don't try to change her emotions. You simply choose, with quiet power, not to lose yourself. And in that moment, something profound shifts inside her mind. She may never say it out loud. She may never admit it, but she feels it. This man is different. With him, I can finally breathe. Masculine calm is felt as a space of emotional safety, and a man who provides that is never forgotten. Why does it leave such a lasting mark on a woman? Because she lives in a world where emotions move fast, loud, and often chaotically. She watches the men around her, the one who gets nervous at the slightest criticism, the one who explodes when he feels challenged, the one who panics in conflict, the one who dramatizes everything. And then there's you, the one who stays steady, the one who never loses his center, the one who turns tension into clarity. You become a reference point, a quiet force, a pillar. She can walk away. She can try to forget. She can meet other men, but the man who stayed calm in the storm, she can never fully erase him from her memory. Real example, the sharp message. She sends you something cold, short, provocative. Do whatever you want. 95% of men panic instantly. They double text. They ask what's wrong. They become clingy or aggressive. They fall into emotion. You reply simply, "Okay, we'll talk when you're calm." You don't run. You don't explode. You don't beg. You don't chase. You show mastery. And that mastery creates a powerful emotional imprint. Even if she plays proud, even if she pretends it doesn't affect her, she will remember. Another real example, the argument. She raises her voice. She's frustrated. She throws reproaches. Most men fire back instantly. "You too. You're going too far. You annoy me." You stay calm, grounded. You look at her and say, "I see you're upset. We'll talk when you're more relaxed." You don't enter the emotion. Instantly, the dynamic shifts. She no longer sees an opponent. She sees a man who is master of himself. And that man, she never forgets him. The psychological truth behind it all. A man who stays calm sends 3 silent, devastating messages. I am solid, not fragile. I control my emotions. They don't control me. I can handle reality as it is, not as I wish it to be. And those messages activate something deep in her brain. Profound respect. You become the kind of man she can admire, even if you're not together. Stoic wisdom to close this part. Marcus Aurelius said, "He who is master of himself is more powerful than he who conquers cities." Be that man. The world rages, you remain stable. Emotions explode, you remain sovereign. And that calm will mark women for life. If this section already hit you hard, drop a super thanks to support the Stoic community and write in the comments, "I am the Stoic man." Tell me what landed most for you. I'll read and reply to every single one. To push this channel forward, let's get this video to 1,000 likes. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. The man who keeps his word, even in the smallest things. There is one type of man women never manage to forget, even years later. The man who does exactly what he says. Not the man who makes big promises. Not the man who talks too much. Not the man who impresses with speeches. But the man who is coherent. The man who says little, but whose actions speak louder than any words. In female psychology, there is a deep truth. A woman never forgets a man she can predict when in the best possible way. A man who is stable, consistent, reliable. A man whose words don't vanish with the first gust of wind. Why? Because masculine coherence is a form of strength, a form of discipline, a rarity in a world full of unstable, changing, inconsistent men. The small things, where everything truly begins. Most men believe only grand promises matter, but a woman judges you mostly on the small details. You say, "I'll call you at 6, and you call it exactly 6, not 6:30, not tomorrow, not never. You say, "I'll pick you up," and you show up, even if you're tired, even if you don't feel like it, because you said it. You say, "I'm going to stop doing this," and you actually change. It's in the small things that you become unforgettable, because 90% of men are incoherent. They say, "I'm going to get my life together," and do nothing. They say, "I'm going to change," and stay exactly the same. They say, "I'll be on time," and arrive late. But you become a different kind of man, a man who leaves a permanent mark, even years later. Real example, the personal project. You tell her, "I'm going to launch my business." She doesn't fully believe it. She's heard it before. Most men promise without acting. Then she sees you working late, making plans, saving money, cutting unnecessary outings, making real sacrifices, building something solid. That moment, you become engraved in her memory, because she won't remember your words. She'll remember your discipline. Real example, the relationship. You tell her, "I'm not looking for confusion. I want something healthy, no games." Then you act like a coherent man. You respect your boundaries. You communicate clearly. You walk away when necessary. You never stay in toxic dynamics. She thinks, "This man doesn't play. I can trust him." And even if the relationship ends, even if life pulls you apart, she will never forget a man whose soul was aligned with his actions. Why does coherence mark women so deeply? Because it activates a profound psychological mechanism, emotional security. A woman never forgets the man who gave her the feeling of stability. The man she knew, if he says something, he will do it. That kind of man becomes a reference point in her memory, a benchmark, a standard. Women unconsciously compare other men to you, and very often, you win. Not because you're perfect, but because you're predictable, in the best possible way. Because you display an inner strength that reassures and lasts. Even years later, she can remember you in the middle of a new relationship. At least he was reliable. At least he did what he said. At least I could count on him. Your name becomes linked to discipline, commitment, stability, seriousness, maturity, and that emotional impact never fully fades. Stoic wisdom, to close this part. Epictetus said, "Words inspire, but actions transform." So be the man whose actions are impossible to forget. The man who speaks little, but whose every word becomes reality. That's the kind of man who marks a woman for life. If this part touched you, send a super thanks to strengthen the Stoic masculine community. Now write in the comments, "I am the Stoic man," and tell me what you think. I'll read and reply to every single one. To support the channel, let's push this video to 1,000 likes. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. The man who doesn't chase, but chooses. In a world where most men beg for attention, validation, or love from a woman, there exists a very rare category. The men who don't chase, they choose. And those men, Women never forget them. Why? Because they embody a quality that has almost disappeared. Personal sovereignty. A man who chooses isn't arrogant. He isn't closed off. He isn't cold. He's simply aligned with himself. He knows what he wants. He knows what he deserves. He moves with intention, not from need. That masculine energy marks a woman deeply, sometimes for life. Most men pursue. You attract. Look around you. 90% of men try to convince a woman to love them. They send messages too fast. They ask 1,000 questions. They insist. They call again. They beg silently. And women, even if they never say it, feel that energy. They sense the lack, the dependency, the desperate desire to be chosen at any cost. And that energy doesn't inspire. But the man who chooses operates completely differently. He doesn't try to please. He is pleasing. He doesn't seek approval. He approves himself. He doesn't wait for someone to give him a place. He creates one through his presence. He's a man who naturally attracts, without forcing, without chasing, without begging. Real example, the conversation. She replies slowly. She takes time to show interest. She gives crumbs of attention. A dependent man writes more, asks if she's upset, tries to win her interest, makes himself too available. You, the man who chooses, do the opposite. You slow down too. You recenter on yourself. You don't punish, you don't make drama, you observe and decide. Does this woman deserve my attention? Does this dynamic elevate me? That single behavior communicates something extremely powerful. You don't want to convince, you want to connect, and that is unforgettable. Another real example. Asymmetrical interest. She hesitates, she likes you, but not fully invested. She blows hot and cold. She wants you, but not too much. A chasing man will try to constantly reignite the flame. You do something else. You observe what she actually gives, not what she says, not what she promises, not what she hints at. You look at the facts, and if you see she's not aligned, you step back, not with anger, not with revenge, not with hate. You step back with calm, with dignity, with clarity, because you choose a relationship where both move forward, not one where you have to drag the other. And believe me, the man capable of saying, "I want this, but I won't beg for it," stays etched in a woman's mind forever. The man who chooses is rare. The man who chooses knows his value. He doesn't rush. He never loses himself in another. He never lets anyone dictate his direction. He's capable of saying no, even to a beautiful woman. He doesn't base his identity on the love a woman gives him. That attitude creates a powerful psychological impact. A woman can pretend to be indifferent, but inside she thinks, "This man is different. He doesn't depend on me. He has a life. He has a center. He has direction." And a centered man is the kind of man you respect deeply and never forget. When you choose, you become unforgettable, because the chasing man leaves an impression of lack, but the choosing man leaves an impression of emotional maturity. The chasing man tires. The choosing man inspires. The chasing man wants to be validated. The choosing man self-validates. The chasing man follows the woman. The choosing man follows his vision, then sees who can walk beside him. And that's the energy that stays in a woman's heart, even after your story ends, even after years, even when she thinks she's forgotten you. Stoic wisdom to close this part. Epictetus said, "He who depends on others is never free. Become the free man, the man who walks by choice, never by need, the man who doesn't beg for a place, but naturally draws people to his side. That man, no woman ever truly forgets." If this part touched you, send a super thanks to reinforce the stoic masculine community. Now write in the comments, "I am the stoic man," and tell me what you think. I'll read and reply to every single one. To support the channel, let's get this video to 1,000 likes. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. The man impossible to destabilize by judgment. There exists one type of man who marks women more deeply than smooth talkers, more than seducers, more than rich or popular men. The man who cannot be destabilized by the judgment of others. That man possesses a near mythical rarity, inner solidity. He doesn't tremble when criticized. He doesn't change his personality to please. He doesn't play a role to be validated. He doesn't force smiles to avoid conflict. He doesn't minimize his opinions out of fear of disappointing. He's centered, calm, stable, and above all, free. And that inner freedom makes him unforgettable. Why does judgment destabilize so many men? Because most men want to be liked, want to be loved, want to be chosen, want to be accepted by everyone. So they become emotional chameleons, men who avoid conflict at all costs, men who pretend to agree, men who change to be approved. But all of that creates weak, unstable, predictable energy. And women sense that fragility instantly. Conversely, when a man is not destabilized by judgment, he sends a silent but devastating message. I am not here to be validated. I am here to be authentic. You can love me. You can hate me. I remain myself. That man leaves a deep mark. Real example, the test. It's real. Women test, not out of malice, but to evaluate a man's inner strength. Imagine, she says in a slightly provocative tone, "You're not like other men, are you?" A fragile man justifies immediately. "No, but I meant, it's not what you think. I can change." You, the centered man, answer calmly, "No, I'm not like other men." Without arrogance, without aggression, without justification, just clear truth. She goes quiet. She observes. And in her mind, something imprints itself forever. This man owns himself. And that man? She never forgets him. Another real example, social judgment. You're in a group. People discuss. Someone contradicts you. Someone mocks a little. Someone questions your view. An unstable man gets upset, wants to convince everyone, raises his voice, justifies too much, loses calm. You stay grounded. You give your opinion, then let people think what they want. You don't need everyone to agree with you to exist. That kind of attitude creates an impression of quiet strength. A woman watches that in silence, even if she says nothing. She won't forget you, because your attitude reveals rare maturity. The man who owns himself creates silent attraction. When you're no longer dependent on others' gaze, you speak without trembling. You set boundaries without aggression. You say what you think without fear. You move in your direction without justification. You don't wait for approval to act. That emotional independence creates deep attraction. A woman admires the man who doesn't need validation to be strong. And even if the relationship ends, even if you part ways, she will always remember you as the man who respected himself. The man who didn't bend, but positioned himself. Judgment only touches men who doubt themselves. The truth is, if judgment affects you, it's because you're judging yourself. An aligned man doesn't fight others' opinions. He lives by his principles. He acts by his vision. He follows his mission. He doesn't explain why he makes certain choices. He doesn't adapt his life to be applauded. He doesn't shrink to appear perfect. He moves, calm, certain, rooted. And that inner coherence leaves a deep emotional imprint in female memory. Stoic wisdom to close this part. Marcus Aurelius said, "It is not the judgment of others that troubles us, but the opinion we hold of it." Be the man who is not troubled. Be the man who owns himself. Be the man who remains free in a world that tries to format him. That man stays in the heart, even in his absence. If this part inspired you, send a super thanks to support this Stoic community. Now write in the comments, "I am the Stoic man," and tell me what you think. I'll read and reply to every single one. To support the channel, let's get this video to 1,000 likes. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. The man who loves himself and moves forward without apologizing. There is one thing women never forget, even years later. A man who loves himself, who respects himself, who never needs permission to exist fully. That man radiates something unique, a presence, a direction, an inner strength that depends on no one. He doesn't chase attention. He doesn't run after validation. He doesn't beg for love. He moves forward, quietly, steadily, with deep conviction. I am enough. I am complete. I am the man of my own life. This isn't arrogance. This isn't narcissism. It's the perfect balance between humility and self-love. A man who loves himself becomes unforgettable. Why? Because he unconsciously shows a woman that his value isn't on sale, that he's not there to fill a void, that he's there to share a life that's already rich, already built, already solid. Female psychology responds powerfully to masculine self-love. When a woman meets a man who truly loves himself, she feels it instantly. She sees he doesn't shrink to please. He doesn't sacrifice his dreams to avoid conflict. He doesn't lower himself to get a little affection. He doesn't live through her. He's not afraid to say no, because his yes has weight. That man has a clear identity, and a clear identity is insanely attractive. When a man loves himself, he never clings to a woman who doesn't respect him. He doesn't need daily validation. He never abandons his values to impress someone. He's not afraid to lose because he knows he'll always find himself again. He doesn't chase love. He attracts it. Real example you'll recognize immediately. Example 1. The man who never forgets himself in a relationship. You've probably been in this situation. You're in a relationship. She starts taking up huge space in your life. You stop going out. You pause your projects. You put your career on hold. You drop the gym. All to give more. Result, you fade. You disappear. You betray yourself. But a man who loves himself acts differently. He says, I love you, but I will never abandon myself. He keeps his rhythm, his goals, his passions. Not only does the woman respect him, she admires him. Because he doesn't lose himself in love, he adds his own light to it. Example 2. The breakup that reveals true value. Imagine a difficult separation. Most men fall into begging, desperate messages, fear of the void. But the man who loves himself takes another path. He breathes deeply. He accepts the pain without collapsing. He says, if she leaves, that path is no longer mine. He works on himself, reclaims his physique, his discipline, his projects. That energy, women never forget it, because respect is reborn even after the end, because masculine dignity leaves a permanent mark. Example 3. The man who knows how to say no. You find yourself in a situation where she asks something that goes against your values, your schedule, or your dignity. A man lacking self-love says yes to avoid discomfort. But the man who loves himself says calmly, I can't. That doesn't align with me. He doesn't yell. He doesn't attack. He doesn't run. He respects himself. And that's exactly what gives him silent power. Because a man who respects himself instantly inspires respect. Stoic wisdom to close this part. The first relationship you must master is the one with yourself. If you love yourself, discipline yourself, honor yourself, then the entire world, women included, will treat you at that level. Self-love isn't a luxury. It's a masculine responsibility. You want to become a man women never forget. Then start by loving yourself enough to never betray yourself again. You are your first commitment, your first mission, your first responsibility. Never apologize for being you. Never apologize for existing. Never apologize for wanting to grow, become stronger, more disciplined, more stoic. And remember this. When a man chooses himself, he becomes unforgettable. If this video spoke to you, if it inspired you, if it helped you stand taller, breathe deeper, become better, send a super thanks to support the Stoic community. Write in the comments, I am the Stoic man. Tell me what you really think. I'll read and reply to every single one. And help the channel reach 1,000 likes, because the more you like, the more YouTube shows this video to other men who want to evolve. You can literally help someone today just by subscribing, liking, sharing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for growing. Thank you for embodying inner strength. See you in the next video.